Thank you all for coming this evening to the showing of the Student Commission for Unity's final data presentation. We have all worked very hard on this project, and it means a lot to all of us that you have come to join in this monumentous experience. My name is Simone Dyson, and I will be the MC for the evening. I am a junior in the business school at Georgetown University, and I am a marketing and management double major. I am involved in various activities here, but to me, SCU is more than just another organization. It is an opportunity to change our university for the better. Diversity has had a huge impact on my college career, and I feel that everyone should be afforded the same luxury. At the end of the program, it stated that we will have a question and answer session. However, due to the length of our presentation, that may not be possible. We apologize. We will now begin our program with an introduction given by Rosemary Kilkenny, Esquire. Thank you.
Begin, I would love the audience to acknowledge the young men who displayed for us. They're high school students in the local school in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for your wonderful performance. We really enjoyed it very much today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to join you this afternoon to hear about the GUSA Student Commission for Unity's very important work that has culminated in the report that is about to be announced today. During the past several months, the Commission has reached out to me and several of my colleagues here today to inform us about these efforts. As I recall, there were a number of conversations around campus and the nation about the Gen 6 controversy some 2 years ago, and the less than desirable coverage nationally and locally about this issue. Georgetown University students took the initiative to take a look at our own community and figure out how best to assess the level of student engagement around racial issues. By that time, the commission was formed and decided to embark on a research project to answer some of these questions. I am told that the Student Commission for Unity has worked with about 70 students and 4 faculty, staff, and administrators to create and administer a survey instrument using university-wide approved research methods. On September 22nd, about 5 research teams were formally formed, and they began their assessments and continued meeting throughout this past fall. They analyzed how students responded to the questions about prejudice, discrimination, and the fulfillment of Georgetown's Jesuit identity. The research and recommendations that you will hear today are the result of 15 months of student-led, faculty, and staff work. And I certainly hope and encourage you to pay full attention and work with the students as we move into the next phase of considering and hopefully implementing these recommendations. We would like to foster an environment that educates women and men to be reflective, lifelong learners, to be responsible and active participants in civic life, and to live generously in service to others. Thank you very much.
Now for your viewing pleasure, we will show a short documentary made by the executive board members of the Student Commission for Unity. It discusses diversity at Georgetown University with interviews from students and faculty. Enjoy.
Hi, my name is Brian Keston. I'm the chairman of the Gaston Student Commission for Unity. I'm a junior here at the theology major. people look at me and they wonder, you know, what's this white straight Christian male doing, going around talking about diversity and social justice and all types of things, reaching outside boundaries. And the truth is, I'm not trying to get everybody, you know, to think like me or try and, you know, hold hands in public and all types of other stuff. But, you know, it is important to try and reach out and just find and seek out common humanity, to develop our understanding of each other, not based on stereotypes, but based on authentic experiences. And it's, you know, it's our opportunity at college before we go out into the world, where housing is segregated, where jobs, you know, have different pay scales, where, you know, all types of different inequalities exist in education, you know, separating children from each other. This is our shot, you know, to get to know each other. This is our shot to find truth out of, you know, a lifetime of you know, misunderstanding. So at Georgetown, it's been my opportunity to learn to love other people, and it's been my opportunity to find my identity in others as well. And while the conclusions that I found may not ring true for everyone, it's an opportunity to learn and to grow that everybody ought to have in a college experience.
Yeah, it's sort of a taboo subject, I think. I don't think a lot of people like to talk about it. The more it's out in the open, I think the better it'll be for everybody.
Any university that aspires to be great, or even good, I think, has an obligation to assemble people from all over and from all walks of life.
People often ask me, what's the mission mean to you, the mission of the university? I am excited to have her in a place where a mission statement says, in order to make a difference in the world, we have to have a commitment to things like justice and having good dialogue, to conversation with others of many faiths, of many backgrounds, with the hope that each of us then, individually, but especially collectively, can work to advance that mission.
Our students at Georgetown involved with fighting for social justice. I think that there are a few core groups on campus who definitely, that's like their main goal, or their, so they don't even think their main goal, but I mean there's a lot of like different groups that do solidarity, a lot of the religious organizations on campus too. Sisters for Christ, InterVarsity is very much about justice.
But at the same time, if you're not involved in those groups, I don't think it's a big deal.
There's no real incentive for you to become involved.
I think students get so connected to their communities and their maybe set of friends or the activities or areas of interest that sometimes they don't leave enough time to respond to some of the interesting programs or activities or events that might be happening at a given moment. So it's really easy to get into a routine and get into a cycle and focus your time and attention and sort of exclude yourself from the other opportunities there.
I think that issues like diversity and social justice are really at the core of what I hope we're about in student affairs and what I hope my role helps to foster here on campus. A couple of directions that I think are particularly promising for us to work on together. Number one, strengthening our capability to bring different groups of students together for meaningful dialogues.
As part of SCU, and being a senior, in my fourth year at Georgetown, I've noticed, throughout all 4 years, throughout my progression in my college life, I've noticed that, there have been things happening on campus as far as incidents of discrimination. We get emails almost every week with some kind of, mishap on campus. And there have been a few of those throughout, the 4 years that have involved discrimination and basically some kind of bias. And, there are responses to it by the student body. There'll be protests, there'll be talks, and all this, basically primary responses that get limited to just conversation, which is good, because that's one thing we need is conversation between people who otherwise would not be talking to each other, but at the same rate, talk only goes so far. And that's one of the things that I was starting to get a little disillusioned with by my junior year, or end of sophomore, start junior year. I was like, I've been part of student groups, we talk a lot, put on events, but nothing really happens.
Have I ever felt any targeted discrimination on campus? At the end of last year, as we were packing up spring semester to head out for summer, I went to the storage truck that was laid out. It was outside of the Southwest Quad, and I was waiting in line, showing, ready to get out of Georgetown to go home. And I had my blue jeans on and a mama shirt on, looked like a regular college student, sitting in line, and there are Hispanics who are moving the boxes. They're the ones who are working with the company. And this student who's standing in line next to me, who apparently didn't know that I wasn't working for the company, he thought that I was a worker for the company, turns to me and asks, "Sir, excuse me, would you mind getting my boxes for me, please?" Completely serious. I thought he was joking at first, but I turned, kind of smiled, looked at him, he was serious, and I just shook my head and just stared at him and said, "I don't work here, dude."
It's like, how do you do diversity? Like, how do you say, okay, we're going to take action and let's have quotas? Like, how he does that?
Like, for example, when everyone talks about diversity, one action would be not to separate yourself in the cafeteria. Like, I see a lot of people are, oh, we need diversity, we need inclusion, but then you see those same people simply run downstairs to eat and go upstairs and eat out. So we can let these see class.
But then, okay, so you're saying diversity is a choice, right? And the sad thing is that it's a choice for some people and for other people it's not. And, so if I just have to be, Latino every day, all day, and I don't really have anybody that looks like me, then I have to meet everybody else on my floor sometimes, or else just, I'm not going to do anything. So for some people it's a choice, some people it's not. Like, what do you do with that? Like, how do I do diversity better if I have to be, the quote-unquote diverse person?
I love this place, but there's so many problems you can really see in Georgetown, Just being in a business class, and you're like the only African American in that class. And just looking at the faculty body and the staff body, and you really don't see a lot of people that look like it. I'm not really complaining, but I think there should be some change.
How SCU came about during that time was, it was a very tumultuous time on campus, as it was pretty much around the country as far as issues of discrimination and race relations and all that because of the Gina 6 that was coming on at the time. And parallel to that, unfortunately on campus there were a couple of hate crimes related to I think it was two homosexual individuals on separate occasions who got abused while they were on random college nights. So it was pretty clear that just on campus there was a need for something to change as far as students treating other students, how students even look at each other and the campus, and for there to be some semblance of unity.
When we compare Georgetown to some universities that are in the top 25 in this country, I think we're okay, but I hear some of my experiences from people who go to Brown, who go to Harvard, and there's so many other things that are offered at their schools that I think we can offer. So we get that.
I would say I see more pros than cons. And my hopes would be that we could have a very open dialogue between the students, faculty, and administration. And ultimately what I would like to see is some reflection within our community, within our curriculum, for undergraduates in particular, that would build on what we have. I know that many departments already offer courses, offer classes, where some element of diversity might be already integrated in a particular class. If we can build a course that will sort of be integrated onto those various points, then I think that will strengthen what we can offer to the university, to the students.
SCU came along, and the main thing that I saw with SCU was that it offered the chance of something tangible. It offered with the final report that we would work towards, we would have something that we could hold as something that to hold the campus accountable with, pretty much. And we would then be able to use that and say that no, things aren't all right, and this is why. This report explains why things aren't all right. And so in that way, even though we wouldn't directly be changing the campus and changing the way things are on campus, we'd be providing the proof, the final concrete proof to say that things do need to change. And even if it's us not changing things, at least we'd be able to spark other students after us to change things, and hopefully administration as well, because without them, students really can't do much.
What I have really appreciated about SCU is the fact that it's a student-initiated, student-led, and has persevered over a relatively long amount of time. A number of the student projects that I encounter, usually because in the provost office for the University Ed Council or ASA funded, are much shorter term. So the complexity of SCU, the complexity, the scale of the research project, the number of questions, the number of students, the hierarchy that was organized, this to me was very impressive, as well as the consultation with a number of different experts who were able to help and ensure that they were able to process.
When people ask me what does social justice look like, I think I say things like it looks like what people are doing for others. Our own mission statement of the center begins, in order to advance justice in the community, we will take our role, and that to me is exciting. The mission becomes real when centers, when departments, when colleges, when all of us say the mission is us. What are we doing individually and collectively to make it real?
It seems like when you go around and talk about diversity, when you go around and talk about stereotypes, no one really talks about it because they don't think their voice is going to be heard. But honestly, this needs to change. And I believe with SCU, this change will start.
My long-term goal is a subversive one. I hope to transform the university. I hope to be part of a movement that over time transforms the university. And not just for selfish purposes. I think that just like people who work over the decades to transform the United States in honor of the values that the country itself proclaims, I hope to help transform the university to make it look, feel, and act like the place that it describes when it talks about itself.
Amen.
Our first board member to speak this evening is Brian Cook. Brian is currently a junior in the college as a sociology and English double major. Along with Brian Keston, Cook is one of the co-chairs and original organizers of this project and has been involved in it since its creation in 2007. Other than SCU, Brian is involved in various campus organizations such as Our Education, Y Lead, the Black Student Alliance, 25 Days of Service, and has most recently started the Georgetown summer program called Black Summer Leadership Experience.
Thank you. As you saw in the video, the Student Commission for Unity was created in October of 2007, so this has been a long time coming. We've all come a very long way, and believe me when I say we are incredibly humbled and so thankful to complete this portion of the great work that's to be done on this campus. I can say it's truly been amazing and inspiring, a blessing really, to see a small idea for a survey turn into an awakening of passion and concern for service to our community and humanity. Allow me to begin with a quote. James Baldwin, the prolific writer and civil rights activist, said in his famous work, The Fire Next Time, I love America more than any other country in this world, and exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually. I've spent 3 wonderful years thus far on the hilltop, and I can truly say that I love this place. I like Georgetown for its great basketball and the beautiful campus, but I love Georgetown for its ideals and potential. Things have not always been peachy keen, though. I cannot say under any circumstances that I've been privileged enough to enjoy this place from day one. I've experienced people and attitudes here that have made me feel that I don't belong, that have made me feel that I cannot compete, that have made me feel that my voice and my perspective are inferior. I can recall the very first weekend that I arrived on campus as a freshman. I lived with another black guy that year, but nearly everyone else in my hall was white. My next door neighbor was moving in, and his parents had come up to his room to say goodbye to him. I took the opportunity to introduce myself and embrace the possibility of a lifelong friendship, because people always say, your freshman floor buddies are going to be your best friends forever. I walked into my neighbor's room, and we exchanged smiles and names. Before I knew it hit me, the guy's father had extended his hands and asked boldly, and as if there was nothing out of the ordinary, "What team do you play for, son?" I was in a daze and scrambling to figure out what emotions to display, how to perceive what this man had implied about me and my potential, what his comments meant in relation to this place that I was about to spend 4 years at, and how genuine the entire family seemed to be in this curiosity. Here I was, 5'10", a bit chubby, and pre-med at the time. He certainly had no reason to ask if I were an athlete, besides, of course, the all-too-salient fact that I am black. My Georgetown experience had begun in a terribly depressing way. It would not be long until I found myself attempting to join white friends at parties on the weekend, and a white student would stop me at the door and make an excuse like, the party's actually ending, like, in a few minutes. Or, no niggers in this party. It's happened to me. Or I would sit as one lone black student in a 100-person lecture hall and literally feel queasy from the thought of answering a question incorrectly or saying something that might validate any stereotype suggesting that I'm a bad student, I'm lazy, I'm stupid, or only capable and valuable in so much as my athleticism might take our track team to the Big East Championship. These stories are painful to tell, and I'm so used to telling them that I find them cliché. And I catch myself taking pride in turning the other cheek, presenting myself in a way that shuns victimization, and pretending that my experience here has been nothing but fun. What's more is that as we began to talk to other students about these issues, I realized that I was all but alone in my frustration and my hopelessness about seeing any kind of justice. So many students have unfortunately seen an unseen cold shoulder by other students, by faculty, by the systemic and institutionalized forces of this university. I began to realize that this hidden pain and discomfort that people feel is compounded by race, gender, socioeconomic background, sexual orientation, and religion, among other things. That very same pain and discomfort then lulls students into complacency, and groups accept that they're treated a certain way and refuse to even report instances of discrimination. I was one of those students. Along the way, I grappled with these intense emotions alone, or I shared them with my close friends, but I grew to see that people who looked like me understood. Some people call this self-segregation, but they often miss the larger forces at play. The psychological hardships that students can endure in trying to find comfort in the face of constant chastisement and degradation by majority groups. I'm a sociology major and spent plenty of time reading and thinking about social inequality. I found that the moral suasion of the best of America's social movements for equal rights have never attempted to replace majority supremacy with minority supremacy. Rather, we, and by that I mean all people committed to justice and love, seek to engage in democratic and Socratic questioning of the ideologies and power structures that permeate a society, or a university for that matter. Georgetown came alive for me when I began to act as if what I read was not supposed to be memorized, but internalized. And our synthesis of these ideas with our personalities, our strivings, can be materialized in the form of action for the common good. This university has provided an incredible opportunity in our lives to engage in this process of educating the whole person, but its structures at times can limit us. The Student Commission for Unity is essentially a group of students from all over this campus who recognize that we have room for improvement and for growth in the name of our mission. We've analyzed the data and developed ways that we want to change this university for the better. This is a movement that will give voice to the unheard because we've documented not all, but many problems that go unreported and hidden from campus discourse. I love Georgetown because I'm committed to being a reflective lifelong learner, striving to be a responsible and active participant in civic life, and above all else, living generously in service to others. We are taking a stand today because we love this place, and we will spend whatever energy we have to fight for her ideals. Thank you.
Elizabeth Ferland and Yvonne Bliss will now present the general student body data. This data was not broken down and represents the general figures of the undergraduate community at Georgetown University. The survey was taken by over 1,500 students, and the survey and research project have both been approved by the Institutional Review Board. Elizabeth Ferland is a sophomore in the School of Foreign Service as a STEM major with a security studies emphasis. Elizabeth's other Georgetown commitments include working for the Corps in Midnight Mug, being an escape leader, new student orientation advisor, and playing field hockey. The Student Commission for Unity is important to her because she wants to work towards Georgetown being a more cohesive and accepting community. Yvonne Bliss is a freshman in the School of Foreign Service. His anticipated major is Regional and Comparative Studies with a religious and political focus. His other Georgetown activities include being the Vice President of the Georgetown Orthodox Christian Fellowship. He wanted to be a part of the Student Commission for Unity because although he is just a freshman, he understands the historic impact that SCU can make in Georgetown.
The bias reporting system is a tool available to all students who experience a bias incident at Georgetown. It is formal documentation and formal steps taken to address the situation if they are so warranted. However, we found that of those surveyed, only 27% were aware of the bias reporting system. Although this statistic in itself is very low, when we looked at the statistic for how many people actually reported incidents to the system, we were even more surprised. Only 5% of those surveyed said they used the bias reporting system, and even then, they only used it sparingly, stating that they had mixed feelings towards campus resources for reporting, preventing, and disciplining incidences of bias. This is an extremely low number of students taking advantage of the resources available to them, and although 53% of surveyed students said they thought campus resources were adequate, more needs to be done to promote their existence and their effectiveness. On a more positive note, when we surveyed students on the university's fulfillment of the Jesuit ideals, there was a large amount of positive feedback. The highest agreement came with the university's fostering of interreligious understanding, with 84% agreeing or strongly disagreeing with this being successfully fulfilled on our campus by the university. 62% agreed or strongly agreed that Georgetown promoted and exhibited community and diversity, which, although still a high number, was the lowest of the 5 ideals that were on the survey. The other ideals included were educating the whole person, promotion of men and women for others, and cura personalis, all of which had high agreement rates between 62 and 84%. This was a very positive result. However, when students were surveyed on how well Georgetown students exhibit these same 5 ideals, agreement rates dropped by an average of 16%. Although students feel the university is doing a very good job of exhibiting the Jesuit ideals, they feel that some of it is lost in translation to the actual student body.
Discrimination and discrimination-related incidents were a major factor that led to the initial implementation of this project, and so their incidence on campus is clearly one of our foremost concerns in improving community life at Georgetown. A full 79% of student respondents to our survey have witnessed students committing acts of discrimination. Compare this to the mere 5% of respondents who have reported incidents through the bias reporting system. Thankfully, far fewer students witnessed incidents committed by faculty, staff, and administrators, but that number, 44%, is still significant enough to be troubling. These numbers are both roughly double the rate of students who reported themselves being the target of discrimination. In addition, nearly half of all respondents admitted to having ignored an instance of discrimination, 49%. Finally, over half the respondents replied that they had felt uncomfortable at Georgetown because of their identity, 53%. Another major area of focus in our study was religious observance among Georgetown students. Our data yielded that roughly a quarter of students attend religious services regularly or often, and about a fifth never do. Over half of the students surveyed have attended services of a group other than their own.
In one of the later questions, we directly asked students what they thought about self-segregation on Georgetown's campus. A staggering 76% of students surveyed said that they believed this was a real problem at Georgetown and that too little was being done to address it. Of the same students surveyed, 55% of them said that self-segregation had been a problem at their high schools. Although this is also a relatively large number, it still means that 21% of students surveyed only began to consider self-segregation a problem on coming to college. This is worrying as Georgetown prides itself on the diversity of students it contains in the student body. On returning to the question about the Jesuit ideals, this can be further exemplified in that Georgetown's promotion of community and diversity and the students' exhibition of this were the two lowest agreements of all the graphs. There were 3 questions that directly targeted racism and its prevalence at Georgetown. The first asked if racism was a problem at Georgetown, to which 34% of students agreed and 35% disagreed. Secondly, we asked if racism influences students, faculty, and staff at Georgetown, and 33% of students agreed, with 37% disagreeing. Finally, we asked if students of color face alienation or discrimination at Georgetown. This was the only question that had more agreement than disagreement, but the numbers were still extremely close, with 34% of students agreeing and 32% disagreeing. As can be seen from all 3 of these questions, students are very uncertain and divided when it comes to racism as an issue at Georgetown, with almost a third of students falling into each category. Although there isn't as much evidence to suggest racism is a real problem at Georgetown, a third of students agreed with each statement, which in itself is still too high.
This project exists to combat all forms of discrimination, which includes bias based on sexual orientation. Students agreed far more strongly that homophobia was a problem at Georgetown than they did about racism. 61% of respondents, compared with 34% with regard to racism. 57% of respondents agreed that LGBTQ students face alienation or discrimination at Georgetown. This affirms that students both acknowledge our university's problem with homophobia and are willing to help change the attitude exhibited to LGBTQ students. For both these respondents, the average rate of responding unsure was around 25%. Alienation and discrimination are both sources of pain and estrangement, and infinitely unproductive to the strengthening of a flourishing campus community, regardless of one's political or religious stance on LGBTQ issues. Finally, a full 92% of respondents affirmed the importance of interacting with students unlike themselves. This is clearly tied very much to the problem of self-segregation. No matter how many initiatives are taken to increase minority enrollment, ensure diverse housing, and establish an inclusive atmosphere, if self-segregation continues to haunt us, none of these bold moves forward will have any meaning. This is reflected in the sobering statistic that 23% of respondents believe diversity is discussed too much on campus.
We will now begin the presentations from each individual research team. These These 5 teams were class and school, education background, gender and sexual orientation, race, and religion. Each research team had 5 to 7 student members. The first team to present will be class and school. The executive board members for the class and school research team were Katie Noble and Elizabeth Verland. Katie Noble is a senior in the business school as a marketing and human resources double major. In addition to the Student Commission for Unity, Katie is a part of the residence life staff as a resident assistant. Growing up in Dallas, Texas has given Katie a unique view on segregation and prejudice, and she wants to make sure that those same injustices will not exist at Georgetown.
I was one of the 2 board members who co-chaired the research group that dealt with dividing the data and analyzing it by class, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, and school, college, MSB, NHS, and SFS. The breakup of the full data into these 2 categories proved to be very interesting, allowing us to draw many conclusions based on how long students had been at Georgetown and on what set of core requirements they had been made to fulfill. One of the largest observations we made was the amount of people answering uncertain across the board. Although this may not be as informative an answer as agree, disagree are, it does show that people are increasingly unaware of social aspects and university resources here at Georgetown. Across all 4 schools, freshmen were more unaware and uncertain than seniors, which is as we would have expected. However, as seniors became more aware of social aspects of the university, they increasingly answered the questions negatively, which in itself is also a cause for concern. The fact that freshmen are so unaware means that we need to look at our programs aimed directly at the incoming students every year, such as NSO and IPO. These initiatives will be discussed at a later point in this presentation. Our second interesting observation, based on the uncertainty of answers, was across schools. The MSB was by far the most unsure or unwilling to commit to an answer either way, whereas the SFS had the lowest amount of uncertainty. The students surveyed who were in the SFS were also more likely to check strongly agree and strongly disagree boxes, showing that they were more likely to make a decisive decision for each question asked. In order to further investigate this observation, we looked into the core requirements for each of the 4 schools and any freshman seminars that have to be taken. We came up with a list of further initiatives based on our observations across these 4 schools, and this list again will be discussed in a few minutes by another one of the board members.
I'm Katie Noble, and another one of the trends that was noted was the fact that witnessing instances of discrimination did not translate directly to the feeling that discrimination was a problem on campus. Approximately 80% of every class and school stated that they had witnessed an instance of discrimination by a Georgetown student. However, less than 40% of every class and school agrees that racism is a problem on campus. And only 55 to 70% of every class and school agree that homophobia is a problem on campus. This was especially true of the class of 2011, who, while they were slightly more likely to never have seen an instance of discrimination, agreed that racism was a problem on campus at a rate 10% lower than that of other schools. This was seen to be a problem of people viewing the instance of a discrimination that they had witnessed as isolated and not part of the larger problem that exists on campus. With this being said, SFS students were most likely to have witnessed an instance of discrimination and were most likely to strongly agree that racism and homophobia are a problem at Georgetown. At the same time, MSB students, who are most likely to report never having witnessed an instance of discrimination, are most likely to strongly disagree that racism and homophobia were a problem at Georgetown.
The next research team presenting will be education background. The research team member representing education background is Alessandra Brown. Alessandra Brown is a senior in the business school as the International Business and Marketing double major. She is president of the Georgetown University chapter of the NAACP and a coordinator for Expressions of a Better Georgetown. Alessandra decided to join SCU because she wanted to increase the positive dialogue on campus and help foster group and student communication. Her main ambition is to create a more positive Georgetown environment.